Welcome back now to our next conversation. COP27, the 2022 United Nations Climate Change Conference, began Sunday, 6th of November, running all the way till Friday, 18th of November in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. Top on the agenda is reducing emissions, dealing with climate change, support and funding for poorer countries. Let's talk to David Arinze now, renewable energy expert. Join us from Abuja studio. Great to have you on the program.
Having me. Good morning.
Morning. So COP26 was the conference before this. How has the Ukraine war, inflation, impacted, transition plans from COP26?
Thank you for the question. The Ukrainian war has set the world backwards in several ways. We have seen significant shortages in energy supplies. We have also seen that prices of fuels have increased. We have seen increasing security issues. We have seen funds that would have been used, to fund developing countries, to fund other energy transition initiatives, are now being used to fund war, and resolving the war. So it's there have been several setbacks as a result of the Ukrainian and Russian war.
And we've seen appeals, to developed nations to provide more funding for projects that would enable the most vulnerable persons in the society adapt. How are developed nations responding to this at COP27?
It's quite exciting to see the kind of responses that we are getting amidst that we are seeing at COP27 amidst the various challenges, that are affecting the economic landscape across the globe. One of them, I would say, is the Africa Carbon Markets Initiative that was launched, which of course has myriads of benefits, in financial funding mechanism, in order to ensure that we can have a just and inclusive transition. We have also seen, even for Nigeria, that the UK government has pledged to provide an additional 95 million pounds to fund resilient agriculture. So we can see that we're getting some great great contributions, great pledges from developing countries. We're beginning to see that relevant actions are being taken by developed nations towards developing countries such as ours, Nigeria. But is it enough? I wouldn't say that we are. COP is still on, and a number of pledges are still going to come on board. A number of initiatives are still going to be launched. Energy Day is next week, and so we should expect a few more announcements.
But getting those pledges is one thing. But what for you is the appropriate mechanism to make sure the vulnerable in poorer countries actually get this support?
One thing is very critical. Like you rightly said, it's one thing to make pledges, but are these pledges translating to actual transfers or translating into actual impact? I would say that in COP26 we had several pledges, but where are the world leaders and where are the developed nations? If you look at the pledges, over $100 billion, was pledged, to help solve this crisis, to help to fund developing nations. How much of that amount have literally trickled down into actual transactions or actual inflows? So like you rightly said, it's one thing for us to see the pledges, but we need these pledges to translate to tangible, sustainable projects, which can of course lead to the improved livelihoods, of areas that are vastly impacted by these climate issues.
Right now, we know poorer countries are dealing with rising debt, and debt servicing costs. How can these countries be protected from taking on more debt, in this transition process?
We have to spend as developing nations. We have to finance relevant projects. However, in response to this question, I don't want us as African countries or developing nations to play the victim of how, because we need money to improve, but our African leaders now need to think in words. What do we need to do with this funding that we're receiving? What are our priorities? And what have we identified as our priorities, and what do we need to fund? We need to see that all this funding that is coming in should be used as catalytic funding to unlock new markets, to unlock, to serve as a platform that can yield in bring in more direct foreign investment. And if we do not look at it at that from that perspective, we'll be doing ourselves a lot of disservice. We'll not be doing taking the best decisions for our nation. So this funding, however, that we're expecting, this sort of, we need more monies, because bearing in mind that we have the economic issues across the globe as a result of the Ukrainian war. Don't forget, in 2020, we also have a global pandemic. The world is recovering from this. Africa is recovering from this. And so there would be a lot of shortfalls, a lot of economic turmoil in a sense. But we need to set our priorities straight. What are we spending the monies that we are asking for? And what are the mechanisms that we have set in place in order to ensure that these monies that we are spending are one that can yield us much more returns that we can use to, first of all, clear our debts and also improve our economies.
All right, the World Trade Organization launched a report on how, adopting international trade policies into national climate plans, can improve the global efforts to address, climate change. What's your view on this report?
I would say a big kudos to the World Trade Organization for that report. It indeed puts a spotlight on the benefits, or the what we can call the advantages of the current war that we currently see in Ukraine and between Ukraine and Russia. Because now that gas and energy supplies are being rediverted from Ukraine, from Russia, other European countries are looking at other alternatives, and of course renewable energy is on the front burner. Other countries are looking at how can we ensure that we accelerate the use of renewable energy. We're beginning to see significant increase, and patronage for the renewable energy sector, and this provides a very huge opportunity, especially for us in Africa. And why do I say this? Because it is also a sector. There's a huge demand for it, and of course, when there is a huge demand, it means that it provides an opportunity for economic activities to take place. But for us, if you look across the African continent today, we are not taking advantage of this. What are the platforms that we are setting in place? What policies are we setting in place to ensure that we set up more businesses? Because we look at the infrastructure, whether we're going solar, or whether we're going wind, or whatever renewable energy technology we may want to go with. All of these are relevant sectors and businesses that can be set up, which can, of course, unlock loads and loads of investment. So that report kind of put to the spotlight that it's a trade that would happen. Several trades will happen across different parts of the world, and we just can take advantage of it. Another interesting thing that this report put to bear is the fact that millions of jobs are estimated to be created via renewable energy sources, and so fantastic report. I would say that that report communicates a lot of directions that we can begin to take. We would definitely need to encourage more intergovernmental trade, inter-regional trade, and also ensure that we do not just look at the gloom of the crisis, but the benefits that come with it as well. Thank you.
Yeah, and I saw reports yesterday that some of the participants there were arriving in private jets, and some climate activists were protesting, that why would they, come in private jets? How do you see that?
People, for different reasons, would commute to setting a global engagement in the best way that fits, first of all, their schedules, that fits their security arrangements, as well as other factors, can make one jump on a private jet. And so one thing is critical. what is the purpose of arriving in Sharm el-Sheikh for this engagement? We should look at the overarching benefits. Of course, there are implications on the on our climate when it comes to the emissions that would be recorded. Thousands, of aircrafts trips are happening simultaneously, to convey people in and out of Sharm el-Sheikh for COP. It happened in Glasgow. It will continue to happen in global events. But what is more important is the actions that we are taking after such meetings, is the kind of decisions, the kind of initiatives that are coming on board. So while we have that as an issue to deal with, but let us look at it as a lesser evil to deal with compared to the kind of decisions, life-changing, transforming decisions that need to be made at platforms such as COP.
All right. Well, what are you expecting after COP27?
Governments should put a lot of more action behind those pledges. It is just one thing to pledge, but it's another thing to translate those words into meaningful projects, tangible action. We want to see much more boots on the ground. We want to see much more funding being mobilized. We want to see that it's not just mobilized funding, but we need to ensure that this funding translates into actionable projects that improve the lives and livelihoods of people. I mean, if you look across the country today, even in Nigeria, we had several states being flooded, livelihoods being lost, properties being lost. How do those people bounce back? How do those people come back? And this is not just peculiar to Nigeria alone. It happened in Pakistan. It happened in other countries across the globe. So these are challenges that need to be addressed. These are certain people need support, and we need to ensure that while countries are pledging, governments are pledging, also the media needs and journalists across the globe, activists across the globe need to hold those governments accountable. They have to be, we not just pledge, but what are we pledging for? The funds that are being pledged and the transactions that are coming in, what are we using these proceeds for? And what are these proceeds translating into? Is it translating to improved lives and livelihoods? And if it is, who is monitoring it? Who is evaluating to see that these actions that we are taking is actually taking us to the destination that we need to get to? And if it is not, what do we need to do differently? So for me, not just pledge, it's great to hear those words, but government leaders, leaders across the globe, African leaders, should not turn COP to just a talk shop. But we need to see more tangible actions being taken place right there from Sharm el-Sheikh and even going forward.
Fantastic. Well, we'll keep tracking all those pledges and the actions that come with the pledges. Thank you so much. That was David Arinze, renewable energy expert. Thank you.